Wow signal. Astronomers found a distant white dwarf star, or two, or more, go read the information, with strong magnetic fields that seemed to siphon material towards the star's magnetic poles, like an aurora borealis effect, except it caused hydrogen fusion, a thermonuclear reaction, a localized area, on a small scale, at about a millionth of the power of a typical supernova, for around 12 hours or less. Or it was extreme stellar coronal activity flaring up. It is a star. How did they detect it? You'll have to read about it. Why did I say wow signal? For those of you who don't know, the wow signal was a radio signal detected because a set of radio detecting feed horns, big, microwave antenna looking things, pointed at almost exactly the same direction, but with slight spacing, as the Earth rotated, swept across some star someplace, Wonga, about 72 seconds apart or something like that. And that picked up some star someplace or some object in the extreme distance in space that was putting out a signal in, coincidentally, the hydrogen line. That's what they were looking for, because if you were making a radio transmission, the easiest way to be received would be to be orbiting a star and just happen to be within the angle of one of these kind of horns and make a sensible transmission. What was it? Well, it was literally just like dead keying, like, a star putting off a lot more energy than it should. An unexpected amount of energy. And then when it was swept past the next day, or whenever they decided to check on it, it wasn't doing it anymore. It wasn't that intense. And it was way above normal. It was an extremely sharp peak, indicating, well, it's totally aliens. Or it's just a star putting off a huge amount of radio signals exactly where hydrogen fusion reactions would happen. But I didn't see any story about that being a micronova. What's a micronova? This isn't a micronova. It's 1/1,000,000th of the energy from a nova, not necessarily a supernova, that takes weeks or months. Whereas stars' outer layer and inner layer, which are normally in equilibrium, so the star doesn't shrink or expand or anything, suddenly layers of the star come off and layers of the star fall in. It explodes and implodes at the same time. Normally a star compacts gases so light you can make a helium balloon work and compresses it down to the consistency of, yes, it's still a gas, a highly energized plasma, meaning the electrons are ripped off, with the mechanical consistency of really, really thick lava, all the way down to a compression level where it becomes a metallic material, literally a metal, hydrogen metal at ultra-high pressure, and then finally compresses it even more to where it's maybe higher density than uranium, and suddenly fissions and fusions and such in the core of a star. It's fusion, by the way. And this very tiny amount of matter, about the size of a planet, is pumping out energy at such a high level that it sees the entire star as being technically transparent to light, and then takes anywhere from a decade to 100 years to be conducted to the surface to be emitted as light we can see. That's how long it takes a photon to be released, because it takes the matter and annihilates it into, after being crunched over and over again, into literally just energy, which has no mass. The star slowly loses mass because it turns its matter into literal energy that does not have any equivalent in the form of matter. But some of it recombines, some of it reprocesses, and it keeps going. In a nova, not necessarily a supernova, this process breaks down to where it suddenly starts collapsing in on itself as matter and energy are thrown off the star in an inexplicable way. See also that black holes could technically do something similar, and after a supernova, you can end up with a neutron star, tightly packed matter, or a black hole. Sometimes it'll pass through any stage and become a black hole before it ever does any kind of nova behavior. So the discussion here is that matter is dragged into the north or south pole of a star It's a white dwarf. It's already high density. It probably already has in its core some hyperdense matter that isn't fissioning and fusioning or anything at that point. At least that would be the assumption, because that's the stage right about the point you start having supernovas. It starts going into carbon burning mode. It starts fusing carbon instead of hydrogen, but that's another video. Anything except iron can be fissioned or fusioned. It just becomes more and more inefficient, or less and less efficient. But anyway, the comparison of basically matter falling headlong, like let's say a comet dissolving and pouring into a star rapidly, suddenly hitting the surface and immediately going into a fusion reaction immediately, a thermonuclear reaction, by pure impacting of the surface of a white dwarf, suddenly doesn't sound that crazy, because the whole damn star is nothing but fusion reactions. This is just happening on the surface because matter is falling into it. So how is this a nova? It has no characteristic comparable to a nova, except its energy is about a billionth or a millionth as intense. That's all. And it happens over 12 hours instead of weeks or months. Or, as is explained, originally, because this isn't the first time it's been detected, it could have been extreme stellar coronal activity causing a flare, and not be anything even related to it. The only reason it's being compared to a nova, or that's even used for the expression, is that its energy level is comparable to a nova. It's much more intense than what the star would put out normally. Or it could have been a very small star falling into it from behind, and we can only see it from our side because we're using radio telescopes. So why did I compare this? Why am I comparing this to the WOW signal? That piece of space that signal was picked up, like in the 1970s, wasn't supposed to be there. And it wasn't later. Now, it could have been caused by a radio signal from some other source. It could have been a signal bouncing off of something much more intense over here, just bouncing off that star or some gas cloud or something. But let's say it was a real energy source. Its ratio of intensity matches this kind of thing. So yeah, maybe the WOW signal was, a long time ago, a quote-unquote micronova, or just a hard flare from something being eaten by a white dwarf because it was hungry. I didn't make any midget jokes. Everybody should be proud of me at the 7-minute and 45-second mark. Thank you. So anyway, here we go. Existing data are not sufficient to distinguish between this being a new phenomena or another older one that's just simply more intense. This happened, however, on 4/20/2022. So therefore, of course, we have to have pop science culture poop out. Baffled scientists discover zombie star micronova fusion bombs. Other people screaming, "Take that, science! God wins! Global warming is fake too now." And Donald Trump won. And so did Bernie Sanders. Yeah, I'm going to throw the liberals under a bus. Mostly the Democratic Party. And naturally, channels like Suspicious Observer or whoever pops up with their personal pet theory. Only one explanation. It must be plasma cosmology or something dark side that the guy pulls out of his ass. Or somebody else's theory. And our sun must have a solar micronova cycle because you found a keyword or a buzzword. Okay, well, I'm going to throw in WOW signal. Aha! Checkmate. The end of an age. Global warming's fake. All of you must pray because you're part of a doom cult. So anyway, yeah, you can look at the Wikipedia article. I like looking at the action history and waiting for the fistfights and arguments to start because it always does. Is this a new phenomena? Has it been confirmed by at least 8 or 9 other observations? In the past, when someone would publish a paper with some groundbreaking stuff like this, and someone immediately would run with it because they were grifters, scientists would just discredit the individual's work. And even before that, in science is not that old, but it has become old enough that this used to be the standard. You'd publish a paper and people would shut the hell up about it and test your work. Or they would look at it, figure out it was full of shit, and just say nothing. Well, they're trying to suppress the truth. Then why aren't you dead? Why are you allowed to publish? You can patent a method for walking through walls. That doesn't mean you walk through the walls. A patent doesn't give you authenticity or authority. Publishing a paper like this, where there's obviously a need for more corroboration and such, is not a basis for doing a headline. Solar micronova, zombie stars, fusion bombs. Comparing anything on a star to any plucky bullshit we can do with some uranium and hydrogen is fucking insulting. Don't do that. Like, really, seriously. Nobody ever brings up gamma ray bursts anymore. Okay, now I'm going to bring up the bias here. There's a group of people that want to sell you food supplements that do not want FDA approval because they want to claim constantly they're being suppressed by them. But they're allowed to get away with selling the shit. Nobody can restrict them. They claim they're suppressed, but they're making money at it. Forbidden technology. And if they ever get anything peer-reviewed, which they avoid like the fucking plague, and it's found out that the stuff they sell does no good, they claim that's a suppression. And that we shouldn't have to go through these FDA approvals. These are also the same fuckers who do not like the fact that they can't get hydroxychloroquine passed through as the treatment because they're invested in it heavily and have stock options. Obvious conflict of interest. But something that actually goes through the FDA approval process much more rapidly, and everybody's signed off, like myself and most of you, that we understand we're taking a risk, but we feel it's worth it, and we'll be guinea pigs to do a very fast, very large-scale study so that it gets approval as fast as possible for something that really worked. That's suppression of technology. One set of standards applied to something you don't like and getting mad when it's not anymore and saying that it can be approved in maybe a year versus people trying to get you to have them do peer-reviewed studies in science by not interfering with it and accepting the fact that you're going to get reviewed to find out if it has any efficacy for your snake oil. This bias is based on, I make money for my snake oil, I don't want you peer reviewing it because you'll find out it's not safe and I don't want to lose money, versus, oh, anything approved that was actually checked by scientists and double checked all over the planet with, some financial benefit, but honestly, people could steal the process. That has to be fake. But me lying about needing, that's the bias that happens. Okay, now we'll talk about science here. Scientists put out a effectively not peer-reviewed work, and it's hailed by the snake oil salesman of cosmology and then misinterpreted about some goddamn thing about plasma cosmology or whatever. And somehow global warming must be fake in the comment section now. Versus a mind-fuckingly large amount of peer-reviewed work showing global warming is happening, it's not the goddamn sun, and the sun's stable, which gets in the way of their death cult. Literally taking a Geiger counter to every single seaport and every single beach, confirming that beaches normally do have radioactive material that you can detect because it washes down from the mountain ranges where it's at, versus Fukushima not actually putting out as much radiation as you think because you have a comparison now, versus ignoring all that and screaming constantly that the west coast of the United States is a molten lava pit. Actual science that says anybody can fact check this versus refusing to let anybody find out that you grifted for your stupid little 3-hour tour nuclear proctologist. Grifters selling you snake oil and hydroxychloroquine versus people trying to keep you from dying from a fucking plague. Scientists discovering something and not getting it fact-checked, but somehow it's mainstream media front page news. Instead of actually being conservative scientists, which I haven't said much, but I should say more often, and finding out if shit's actually real before you announce it on Time Magazine's front cover. Or whatever it was. It was actually a tabloid somewhere in Britain. Anyway, I hope this is useful to all of you. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And yeah.